The Nigerian federal government claims to have completed the documentation required to extradite Simon Ekpa, the Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, from Finland to Nigeria. However, there is no official extradition treaty between Nigeria and Finland or the European Union, which complicates Nigeria's direct request for Simon Ekpa's extradition. Nigeria government is now pursuing an indirect approach, pushing for Simon Ekpa to be extradited first to the United States, where he allegedly committed crimes, and then from the US to Nigeria. Simon Ekpa was arrested in Finland alongside 5 others in November 2024. Finland's National Bureau of Investigation, NBI, reports that this group has criminal connections extending to the United States. Since Finland and the US have an extradition treaty, Nigeria hopes the US will accept Simon Ekpa based on US-related offenses, enabling Nigeria to later request extradition from the US, with whom it does have a treaty. A long-standing treaty between the US and Nigeria, signed in 1931, allows for extradition between both countries. However, there's uncertainty about whether it applies to non-residents like Simon Ekpa. Because Simon Ekpa isn't a US resident or citizen, it's unclear if Nigeria can legally request his extradition from the US after such a transfer. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his advisors are lobbying US officials, arguing that Simon Ekpa contributes to unrest in Nigeria and his return is essential for national security. With US leadership reportedly focused on global tariffs and trade, particularly under President Donald Trump, Nigeria may face challenges gaining extradition support. Simon Ekpa is currently detained in Finland's Kylmäkoski Correctional Facility. Amid the legal troubles, his wife has divorced him, a development highlighting the personal consequences of the ongoing case. The situation surrounding the extradition of Simon Ekpa, known as the self-proclaimed Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, has reached a critical juncture that has drawn considerable attention both within Nigeria and internationally. The federal government of Nigeria has announced that it has completed the necessary documentation and legal paperwork required to extradite Simon Ekpa from Finland to Nigeria. However, the path to his extradition is far from straightforward due to the lack of a formal extradition treaty between Nigeria and Finland, or more broadly, between Nigeria and the European Union. The Nigerian authorities have adopted a creative and indirect approach to overcome this legal hurdle. Since there is no direct extradition agreement with Finland, the government's strategy involves having Simon Ekpa transferred first to the United States, where he is accused of having committed crimes. This indirect route is seen as a way to utilize an existing extradition treaty between the United States and Nigeria, a treaty that dates back to December 22, 1931. The logic is that if the United States, which has a legal agreement with Nigeria, accepts him based on offenses he allegedly committed on American soil, then Nigeria can subsequently request his extradition from the United States. Simon Ekpa was apprehended in Finland along with 5 other individuals in November 2024. According to the National Bureau of Investigation of Finland, this group is suspected of having criminal links that extend into the United States. The involvement of American-related offenses provides Nigeria with a plausible rationale for engaging the United States in the extradition process. Because Finland and the United States have a robust extradition treaty, the Nigerian government hopes that the United States will take action based on these alleged crimes. Once Simon Ekpa is in the United States, Nigerian officials believe that the long-standing extradition treaty between Nigeria and the United States could then facilitate his eventual transfer back to Nigeria. Despite this strategic maneuvering, there is considerable uncertainty regarding whether this plan will ultimately be successful. One significant issue is that Simon Ekpa is not a resident or citizen of the United States. This fact raises questions about whether the extradition treaty, which is designed to cover residents, can be effectively applied to someone like him. The Nigerian government, led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his close advisors, is actively lobbying American officials by arguing that Simon Ekpa's activities are contributing to the instability and unrest in Nigeria. They assert that his return is essential for restoring order and ensuring national security. At the same time, the American leadership appears to be preoccupied with other global priorities, such as tariff policies and trade issues, particularly under the administration of President Donald Trump, which may reduce their willingness to act swiftly in response to Nigeria's request. Simon Ekpa is currently being held at the Kilamakoski Correctional Facility in Finland, where the legal proceedings and investigations are still unfolding. The complications surrounding his extradition are not limited to international treaties and legal technicalities. The case has had significant personal repercussions for those involved. For instance, in the midst of the legal turmoil, Simon Ekpa's wife has divorced him. This personal development underscores how deeply the ongoing legal challenges have affected not only the broader political landscape, but also the lives of those directly connected to him. The federal government of Nigeria has not only focused on the legal aspects, but has also been keen on leveraging public opinion and media attention. Nigerian officials are under pressure to resolve the matter quickly, as the unrest attributed to Simon Ekpa's influence in the southeastern region of Nigeria continues to simmer. In public statements and discussions, government representatives have emphasized that the safe return of Simon Ekpa is critical for maintaining national security. They have presented their case by highlighting the extensive criminal network that extends from Nigeria to the United States, and have stressed that his activities are a serious threat to the stability of the region. One of the more controversial aspects of the situation is the strategy of using the United States as an intermediary in the extradition process. This approach is based on the premise that the crimes committed by Simon Ekpa and his associates have a transnational dimension with significant implications in the United States. The federal government of Nigeria is relying on evidence provided by the National Bureau of Investigation of Finland, which suggests that the network involving Simon Ekpa is connected to criminal activities within the United States. This connection, if proven, could potentially justify the United States' involvement in detaining him under its own laws. However, the legal complexities involved in transferring a non-resident through extradition treaties remain a significant hurdle. The United States has a delicate balance to maintain in this scenario. On one hand, it has a long-standing extradition treaty with Nigeria that could facilitate the return of individuals accused of crimes. On the other hand, American officials are cautious about accepting a transfer that might set a precedent for extraditing non-residents. The legal framework in the United States is carefully constructed, and there are questions about whether the treaty provisions apply in cases where the individual in question, such as Simon Ekpa, has no direct ties to the United States beyond the alleged criminal activities. Amid these legal and diplomatic challenges, the personal and political dimensions of the case continue to evolve. The divorce of Simon Ekpa's wife, for example, not only adds a human element to the story, but also symbolizes the broader impact that the unfolding legal battle is having on those involved. The dissolution of his marriage highlights how the consequences of his actions extend far beyond the courtroom and into the fabric of his personal life. This aspect of the story resonates deeply with many observers who are concerned about the human cost of political and legal conflicts. Throughout this process, the federal government of Nigeria has been working diligently behind the scenes, engaging with legal experts, international negotiators, and diplomatic channels to craft a solution that will ultimately bring Simon Ekpa back to Nigeria. The complexity of extradition law and the interplay of international treaties mean that the resolution of this case is likely to be prolonged and fraught with legal challenges. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.